Hello, this is my first ASMR video. As you can or might guess by my name, I plan to specialize in art. It's something I do entirely for fun. It's never anything I've done professionally, but seeing as so many ASMR folk have an affection for Bob Ross, I found it appropriate. Also, I thought that the pencil sounds might be a good trigger. So today we are going to be drawing a comic book character, and that will be Superman. That might surprise you because, as you can see, he's not up here right now. It's because I have very few action figures. In fact, these are my only two. Okay, that's a lie. I also have a Mulder and a Scully one, but that's it, honest. Not that there's anything wrong with having more. But since we don't have Superman, we are going to use these figures as a model. And of course, the most important one is here in the middle. And this is a standard artist figure model. These these are used commonly by artists who do figure drawings. The size this is probably the smallest available, and they get as large as 2 or 3 feet. The reason that they're useful is because the points of articulation and the proportions are accurate for a typical person. Now, what's interesting is the arms here are long enough, but they start too low, so they hang too low. So that's something we have to consider when we're doing our initial drawing. And we'll get back to that in a second, but first, let me show you what we'll be using today. Let's start with the pencils. These are artist pencils, and you can see here at the end they have a designation, HB, 2B, 2H. HB is the middle ground. B means black, so the higher the number, the more black it will be, or bold, or I was taught black, it could be different. And then H stands for hard, so the harder that the lead gets, the lighter the color. So we will be starting with a 2H and for our guidelines, and then we'll switch to HB, and lastly we'll end with 2B. I have, of course, also here a pencil sharpener. I don't know why that took me a second to figure out. It does not make fun tapping sounds, at least not just when I tap it. That's the best I can get out of that. But it serves the obvious purpose of pencil sharpening. And we have our eraser here specifically. This is, as you can see, a white polymer eraser. These I find are the best for just removing pencil marks when you want to wipe it out completely. I have over here in my box what are called kneaded or rubber erasers, but that's for more fine work than the line work we're going to be doing today. So let's come back to our guys here. I have Batman and Bane up here just to kind of help me between the three, because this figure has its limitations. So Batman's not very helpful here because his cape hangs down, and even though Superman has a cape, we're going to have it kind of flowing. So Bane matches Superman's physiology a little bit better. He's just bigger build. So we'll put these two back here. And I'm turning their backs, and you'll understand why in a second. But before we begin drawing, we like to start with a relaxing scalp massage. Just kidding. That's some ASMR humor that you probably didn't get. But so let's start here with our figure. We're going to draw Superman from the back, which is why we've got these guys here like this. Just because we wanted to have a little bit of a unique posture, not just him standing there, but we don't make it too difficult either. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our figure here facing forward, and we're going to pretend he heard something. So he's looking behind him. What is that? And so this will give us a fairly anatomically accurate idea of how he might be standing were he to do this. So now that we've got him turned around like this, now we'll turn his back. I'll adjust it just a little bit. And this is going to be our basic model for how we're going to do the basic shapes. So as I said before, let's take our 2H pencil. That's hard, so it's the softer one. We're going to start with basic guidelines. The human body is essentially made up of proportional shapes, and the most obvious one being the head. So if we start with the head here, the rest of the body will consist of a certain number of heads. Basically, if he were to be standing straight forward, his shoulders would be 2 heads. The top of his arm, a head, his forearm would be a head. And then his legs would be about a total of 3 heads. So now again, we need to use our guy here as a guide because perspective is going to be a factor. So it won't be exact because when we're drawing in perspective, things that are closer need to be larger. So let's start with some basic lines. Again, we've got the head here, which is just a generic oval shape. And then you see how the line arcs slightly down here like that. So this is the basic line here defining the shoulders. And by the way, I forgot to mention it before. This is just a very basic sketch pad. This is my favorite sketch pad. My wife, then my girlfriend, got this for me, and she customized it. It's full of little. The cover has some really neat pictures and photographs and collages that she did to make it look really cool. Maybe some other time I'll show you that, and I can show you my sketchbook and some of my other art supplies and stuff, but I really like it. I use this for a lot of my work. And my typical method, if I'm drawing in the comic style, is pencil drawing, and we're just going to do pencils today. But then I go over it in black ink, and then from that point I scan it into my computer and I do all the coloring digitally. Now I'm taking that currently a step even further, where I'm going to do the inking also digitally. I have now what's called a Wacom. That's the brand name, a Wacom pad, and it's basically a pencil and drawing pad that I can use right on my computer. And so I'm getting better at that, and hoping to move eventually to digital inking, and maybe even from there digitally entirely. So again, we need to think about perspective. These are basically the armholes I'm drawing here. A little bit smaller because it's further away, and then it's going to get bigger. Again, very basic shapes. All right. when we're talking about the hips, similarly, it's about a head length, about a half head in height. And we're also doing circles essentially for the sockets of where the legs begin. So again, each leg segment is about a head and a half. And essentially we're just going to draw stick figures, or a stick figure. Again, considering proportions, the one leg's going to be a little bit higher than the other. And then each arm segment is a head. And the circles indicating the elbows. That's one arm. And then this will be his other arm, which of course will mostly be obscured by his body. Now I'm noticing a mistake that I've made, which is that his head is way too far over here. So we need to move his head to this point right there. I'm not going to bother erasing the previous head at this point because most of this is going to get erased when we get to the hard drawing anyway. So we've got basically our stick figure drawn. We've got our proportions down. So this guy here we'll use very little of from this point forward. Again, we'll use a little bit of Bane here to especially when we get to muscle definition, but we're still pretty far from that. But what we do now is we begin turning the stick figure into a cylinder figure. And that means we're going to fill in cylinders, or more or less cylindrical shapes, with each section of the limbs. By the way, this method, of course, is not invented by me. Lots of people have been doing this for many, many years. I learned this in 8th grade in a library book in my middle school library called Drawing Comics the Marvel Way. Now, of course, Superman, as any rightful geek would know, is not a Marvel character. He is a DC character. But of course, the techniques apply to both and to many other companies and publishers, and of course many artists have drawn for both, and again for smaller print publishers as well. There's a number of them that are becoming more and more common, and then there's some that are divisions of the others. Vertigo is actually a DC title, but they focus on more mature adult titles, things that are less superhero. And there's a company called Image Comics. Image makes some really, really good stuff, including one of my favorites of all time, which is called Proof, which is about Bigfoot as an FBI agent. Very cleverly written. It was just a lot of fun to read. It didn't take itself too seriously, and it just kind of had fun with the lore and the mythology surrounding cryptozoology. So we've got here, and I'm reflexively probably filling in more than I should. Again, we're supposed to be strictly cylinders, and then we begin the process of definition, but I have a tendency to kind of fill in details as we go along. I'm a little bit frustrated here because I'm not sure exactly where the arm is going to start and the back and exactly how those are going to work. It's overlapping a little bit right now, more than I would like. But it's very helpful to have kind of a generic understanding of anatomy. Again, I'm doing things reflexively because it's how I've been doing it for a long time. There's, of course, two major muscles that come up here in the back. And there tends to be a little divot here in the head before we get to the base of the skull. Now, as you can see here in all of our examples, Superman's kind of looking over his shoulder. So the head is almost at an exact profile. So that's exactly what we've got here. Now his eyes are going to be looking a little bit to the left because, again, he's looking over his shoulder. But the head is going to be more or less an exact profile. Again, we're going to be very general at this right now, but this is a good time to talk about facial proportions, because just like the body, the head is divided up into specific proportions. And a lot of times if we're doing a face, if we're doing it head on, we start with the oval, and then we do a line both in right down the center, both vertically and horizontally. And then right there, the eyes are usually right in the middle of the head, which has always surprised me. I always thought they'd be a little bit higher than that, but they're usually not. And then we do another line halfway between the middle line and the bottom. And that's usually where the nose ends. So the nose would end right about there. Ears are generally right about the same level as the eyes are. And then we square out the jaw a little bit, especially if we're drawing Superman. Like so. So we're going to follow the same rules. Drawing Superman here in a profile. We're going to draw a line. It's a bad angle for me. My finger is wiggling. We're going to draw a line here through the middle. And then another line about halfway between the middle and the bottom of the chin. Again, I'm having some trouble with that, with getting at that angle. I might have to turn the paper when I finally get to the head. So there are a few things here that I'm unhappy with as I look at it. His legs are too straight. They need to be bent a little bit more, so I might erase one of these legs and move it over a little bit. The proportions don't look quite right here, so we might tinker around with that a little bit too. Now, it's kind of a cheat that he's going to have a cape, but we're not going to do the full Batman. I want his cape to kind of be fluttering behind him in the breeze, so it's only going to be covering part of him, but still a fairly significant chunk. So that's our basic idea of where the cape's going to be, and again, that means we don't have to worry at the moment quite so much about anything that's going to be covered by that cape. Now, I am going to be drawing the New 52 version of Superman. DC Comics recently released, rebooted all of their titles, and most of the characters got a makeover. Superman's was mild but significant in some ways. For one thing, his collar now comes up his neck a little bit here. His sleeves kind of come over his hands like so a little bit, and they got rid of the underwear. That's the big thing. Well, I don't know if they got rid of it, but it's under his clothes now, so it's one consistent color. He has a red belt that comes around here, but he does not have a separate pair of briefs anymore. The same is true for Batman. And in general, they tried to make a lot of the characters look less like they're wearing spandex and more like they're wearing combat suits or something to that effect. I'm going to do what I said before, and I'm going to erase this right leg. For some reason, my cat is unhappy about that, and you might hear her whining in the background. I fed her not too long ago, so I don't know what she's complaining about, but you can hear her getting quite loud and annoying, and I hope that does not disrupt your relaxation. It certainly does mine sometimes. So we're going to create a bit of a slight bend here at the leg. And that is my cat scratching her scratching post, which may inadvertently be a trigger. So maybe we'll do more of it. But I'm sure her whining meows are not such. They certainly are not for me. And if she spoils this, I'm going to be very unhappy. There we go. I like that a lot better. And this, I don't know if I'm going to erase it, but again, I'm going to have his foot here going out more to his left. So now we get to the really fun part, which is creating some definition. And this is where we'll really start to get to look like a person. So I'm going to go ahead and set down my 2H, and I'm going to pick up my HB just to get a little bit firmer line here. So in our profile here is where his nose is going to end. There are some things, of course, that really define Superman physically. Superman is kind of the alpha male, so he has a very square jaw. And of course, the butt chin. So we have the basic shape of the profile here. Doing the eyes from profile is a little bit different than the front. Essentially, we're going to draw a triangle with a curve at the end. And again, these are very basic shapes we're starting with. In most cases of drawing, that's what we do. We start with very basic shapes. And you can see here his head is too big. So we are going to have to start over a little bit. And truth be told, these I do not typically use figures like this. I just guesstimate the best I can, and I do a lot of erasing and redrawing. I'm not ashamed of that fact. Sometimes when I watch drawing tutorials, I'm like, well, that artist can just always get it right on the first try. I can't be like that guy. But I got over that. So I do a lot of erasing, and again, it's why I like these polymer erasers. They're very good at wiping the marks out. So we made his jaw a little too low, so here's about where his jaw should be instead, and of course that changes the proportions of everything else. So we'll do an eye here. We'll do a nose. So let me erase that. Get the shape down a little bit better. So we've got the chin comes up here, mouth here. Why does he look very sad at the moment? I have no idea. Nose. And that looks about right. Again, the ears are typically right at about the same level. Again, he's going to be looking to his left, so we're at the moment just going to kind of temporarily fill in the pupil here. Although, let's redo that eye, because at the moment he looks unbelievably sad. So I'm going to curve those lines a little bit more rather than doing just the hard thing, the straight line with the curve. So, the cheekbones here are very important because they define the jaw. Imagine the skull. Basically, that's where the cheekbones are in the skull, and the jawbone comes out like this. Part of that's going to be obscured by his neck. And of course, there's hair. He's not bald. That's Lex Luthor. And he has eyebrows as well. As you can see here, this kind of helps add some determination and character to the face. So, now, Superman has a spit curl. I don't know if the New 52 does, but in my world, Superman will always have a spit curl. Hairline, base of the skull usually, plus about an inch. That is an inch on the model as if it were actually there. Hair comes out like so. Little bit of curve here where the forehead is. We call that a widow's peak, especially if it's prominent. His is not particularly prominent. So we're going to lightly fill this in just to kind of remind ourselves that ultimately we're going to want that to be dark. All right, so we've got basic idea. Now again, we're going to do some more refining of that later on. But we get the basic idea now. So here's the neck. The cape is going to hang down a little bit here like this. It's kind of attached on the collarbone up front. Okay, now's the fun stuff. Because these are superheroes and superheroes are cut. We're going to do a lot of that muscle definition there. If you take a look here, let me pull this up closer so you can see it. If you take a look at Bane here, and you take a look at the triceps, this is something a lot of people miss. They are as prominent on the arm as the bicep is, if not more so. And they've got that upward divot there kind of going up the middle. So we've got the deltoid, the bicep, the tricep. Those are the main features of the upper arm. So deltoid stems here from the top. The tricep, which is going to be more prominent because of the proportions. I'm sorry, not proportions, the perspective. Again, we're going to give him that little divot. And then his elbow. That's essentially the definition of his upper arm. Lower arm is a little bit simpler, but again, there's some things that always you want to be conscious of. There's usually a small line in both of these spots here. You don't want to overdo it, although it's hard to overdo it in traditional comic book style because they really go for the definition. But they're starting to shy away from that. Again, they're not wearing tights anymore, so you don't necessarily see every little sinew. Now, we're going to make this one part easy on you. I'm just going to have him balled up in fists. Hands are very difficult to draw. I think that's true for pretty much every artist. the more you do with the hands, the more difficult it is, and I have the hardest time with them. If there's anything I'm erasing and redrawing over and over again, it's the hand. So we're just going to have him kind of with a balled up fist, and again, we get to cheat a little bit because his hand is obscured back there. Now, even though this is also covered by the cape, just for my own, just because it helps me with the other things, I'm going to do a little bit of the back definition. And again, to help you out, let me show you some basic ways that I, at least, if I were to draw him from the front, you've got the neck, you've got the collarbone, which is right about there. All right, deltoids you can actually see from the back if they're particularly built. Pecs, a square and a square. And then you've got, I don't know if it's technically the diaphragm muscle, but it's essentially where the diaphragm is. That's here, that bulges out. You've, of course, got the six-pack, like so. And then some artists, including myself, also show a little bit of, just a little bit of rib cage over here on the sides with a couple humps like that. So if we're doing this from the back, you know, we've got the shoulder blades here. Let me switch back to my HB. The shoulder blades, and then the latissimus dorsi here are basically your mid-back muscles. They're what help you pull things downward. I'm not drawing them particularly well right now, but again, it's more really to kind of help me keep a beat on where things are. And here's his spine, the natural curvature of the spine, all the way up into the neck. So actually, that makes me feel a lot better about how he's looking proportionately and according to perspective, because I was a little bit worried he just wasn't looking right there, but I'm feeling a lot better about that. So we've mostly got his upper body defined now, so let's go ahead and move on to the bottom here. All right, no briefs, but of course there's basic lines, you know, where the butt begins, where the legs begin. He has, like any human being, of course he's not a human being, but you know what I mean, he has hamstrings. So the muscles that come down here in the back kind of divide up here in the middle, and he has calf muscles, again, of course. Looks like I made everything a little bit too far to the right. So the hamstring's going to be more like it's over here. And again, I might tone down some of these lines a little bit later. But right now they kind of help me get a feel for where everything is in relation to everything else. He does have that belt. So I am going to turn my paper now. Not that that's any kind of crime. I'm treating that like it's some weird, bizarre thing to do. But of course, you're going to want to change your paper direction every once in a while. His boots are pretty close to himself, so we don't add too much there. Now again, I'm taking some liberties because if I recall right, in the New 52, this is the ankle bone, by the way. In the New 52, I think his boots are different. I think they've got like some scale thing up here and stuff, but I like the old boots, so that's what we're going to do. And if DC doesn't like it, they can send me a cease and desist letter. I had the right idea with the ankle bone. It was just, if anything, it was just a little bit too high. It should be right about there. Um, one of the reasons I chose Superman to draw today, other than just that he's one of my favorites. My absolute favorite is the Flash, and that just has to do with the fact that when I was a little kid, and my mom made me go to the drugstore with her, she'd sometimes let me pull a Flash. Well, she'd let me pull one comic off the rack. I had to choose one, and I chose the Flash one time and really got into it. And from that point forward, at least for 5th and 6th grade, it was the Flash. There was a really interesting storyline going on at that time. But yes, I chose the Flash over even Batman, or Spider-Man for that matter, which is crazy to some people. But back to what I was saying, I thought it appropriate to choose Superman because of Man of Steel. I need to get this man's butt cheeks correct, so I'm going to have to erase that and start over. People seem to feel very strongly about Man of Steel, one way or another. And I totally actually understand both and respect both points of view. I loved it personally. One of the things I've actually taught in my English class when we study epics like the Odyssey and Beowulf is that Superman is the Hercules or the Beowulf of our time. He's how we communicate our cultural values and what we ultimately consider important. We create symbols and people who become the ideal of what we think we should be. And I was thrilled with the direction of the movie ever since I saw the second trailer. And there's a quote in that trailer from Superman's father, Jor-El, saying, "You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you, they will stumble, they will fall, but in time they will join you in the sun." And that's kind of what Superman's all about. Is that all of us are trying to get there to that ideal. And there was an incredible comic cover of Superman that was made shortly after 9/11. And it was a big picture on a wall of New York's finest. And, a policeman and a fireman were at the forefront, but it included doctors and EMT workers and social workers and all sorts of people who ultimately kind of showed up during that hard time and became heroes. And Superman is only saying one word, and that word is wow. And what I love about that is for a moment we joined him in the sun. For a moment we were great. We were heroes. And we don't always stick to it. We don't always live up to it. In fact, more often than not, we don't. But every once in a while, we do some really awesome things as a species, to the point where even Superman has to look at us and say, wow. And that's why I like him. It's why I like him as the idea of being an inspiration. Some complain Superman's a little too perfect, a little too goody-goody. But that's kind of the point. So we're at the Cape now. We're gonna try to create a natural look, like the wind is blowing But we, of course, want it to keep its shape, or at least the illusion of keeping its shape. So we have to be careful that it doesn't just look like a big flapping mess. For instance, this line up here is too high, so the wind wouldn't pick it up that much. So instead, it's going to come down a little bit like so. And then, of course, at the end is where we really see the curves and the overlapping. And some here too, because it's sagging naturally, where it's kind of hanging down in the back. And I'm going to take another liberty. I do not believe the new 52 Superman has an S on his back. He has it on his front, but not his back. But my Superman has an S on his back, because I said so. Of course, the famous S, which, believe it or not, hasn't really changed that much since the very beginning. It was originally a much smaller S and a much larger yellow, whatever you call this shape. But it's always been this shape, if I recall correctly. It might have, at the very beginning, been a triangle, but it very quickly became this shape, and the S took on this. And in Man of Steel, it very much looks the same, although it has some layering on it. So, and I hope I got that fairly in proportion to, again, I keep confusing proportion with perspective, but I hope I got that pretty decent with the perspective. So, just getting some fine details in here. He has knees. They're mostly out. We want to show a little bit here where the knee is jutting out. Things that we don't see, you know, the quad muscles in the front. But again, they're turned away. So we have here, looks like we've got our basic Superman. So we're going to erase some of these guidelines, and then we are going to move on to our dark pencil and do kind of our final bit here. There will be all kinds of guidelines on this and leftover mess. That's okay, because what I ultimately do, again, if I'm assuming I'm inking it on paper, is after I've inked it, I take a eraser and really make a hard erase, and we erase all the guidelines. All the pencil is gone at that point, and even if there's any little marks or residue left over after that, the scanner does not pick it up. Okay, so we are almost done. Let's find our 2B. Okay, a little bit darker. These pencils, by the way, go all the way up to, well, I've seen 6B. I'll bet they go higher, but you don't have much need for much darker than that, because that's pretty much pitch black. And I messed up the mouth again. I apologize if you're missing part of that. I'm trying to keep the camera aimed in the right direction, but it's a little bit higher than my eyes, so sometimes Now you see here, actually this is a good opportunity to talk about this. You can see here kind of the natural shape that forms along the smile lines. The more prominent you make that, the older your character will look. I actually learned that not by drawing, but by doing theater makeup. Because the mistake people make in theater when they want to make someone look old is they draw lines on their face. But lines on the face never look like anything but lines on the face. So if we want to make a character look older, we darken the lines. We darken the eyes, especially below the eyes, and we really increase the definition of that line there. But of course, Superman is not old, so we don't want to do any more than that. Now, for his hair, there's going to be some spots where, the light is going to reflect on it because Superman has very shiny hair. So actually what I'm doing right now is I'm drawing the spots that are not going to be filled in, and then I'm going to fill in around them. I'm being very quick and sloppy with filling that in. Because again, normally I'd ink it anyway. But I want to get the full effect of having there we go. We have a determined, slightly annoyed Superman looking over his back because he heard something from many miles away, because he can do that. I'm still not happy with his behind. I'm not sure exactly what's wrong with it. I apologize. If you have any ideas, please go ahead and let me know, and we'll correct that. But for now, I'm just gonna tolerate the imperfection. Okay, that's about as good as we're gonna have the S for now. We are almost done. Again, I made some of the choices for this video that I did for various reasons. I'm speaking softly rather than whispering because I have been told I have a nice voice, and so I didn't want to cover it completely by going into a full whisper. But if you like whispers better, let me know, and I'm happy to do that as well in my next video, assuming that anyone watches this one. I am a guy, and therefore I have a more limited audience. I'm okay with that. And I'm running out of things to say as we finish up here. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to make a shout out to the ASM artists who have inspired me as I've discovered this community and this wonderful. And the camera just fell off my head. So that's another secret I was going to avoid telling you, is that I'm sorry if that made you sick or queasy, like motion sickness. But the other secret is that this camera is strapped to my forehead, and that's why I'm worried it's aimed a little bit too high. Now I think it's aimed a little too low. There, I think we're okay. This light is also, the light I'm using here, which of course is also a very important part of drawing. I hope it's not blanching out the pencil. The light's reflecting, at least on a certain angle, off of the pencil and kind of creating a shiny look. And I hope that's not completely killed the image. But anyway, I was about to make a shout out. A couple shout outs to some people who are like, wow, they're amazing. And my head is tingling like crazy. I want to do that too. And maybe I can do it in a way others aren't. So, maybe I can help a few people who are particularly triggered by whatever it is I'm doing. Again, I'm trying to do the Bob Ross thing a little bit because that's mentioned a lot. But of course, this is also something that I enjoy and that relaxes me. Always has, ever since I was very little. If I was upset or anxious or mad or whatever, and I sat down and drew, it helped me focus and relax. But the couple of people that I watch a lot, ASMR Requests is one. Her recent role play with the spaceport travel, man, I love it. And I tingle like crazy. And it's really well done. ASMR Red, I find both very unique and clever and adorable. I hope that doesn't insult her that I say that. Sometimes adorable can seem condescending. She's very young. She's clearly a college student or whatnot. But again, she focuses a lot on diction, which is one of my big triggers, is finely articulated words, which I know is a trigger for other people as well. And let me think, there was a new one I discovered the other day who has a lovely Scottish accent. Although I think in the comments someone said it's not quite Scottish, Northern England, near the border. But and of course there are many others, many others, which is cool. That I've listened to here and there just for a change of pace. But here is our Superman. Yeah, just a little bit of shading. Again, normally that would be added with ink, but since we're sticking with pencil for now, let's just add a little bit of light and shadow. Again, sorry, I have to keep my head down. Another reason I did this, I chose this as kind of my format, and it makes me happy because, well, I'll get to why it makes me happy in a second, but when I was watching YouTube tutorials on, particularly on how to use Photoshop, I found myself getting tingles, and I didn't know why because I hadn't heard about it yet. So because those often were triggers for me, I thought it would be cool to do that. And also those videos were almost always male narrators, which makes me feel good. It lets me know I'm not creepy. A dude can trigger me as well as a female, so it's not some weird. I know that's the self-consciousness we all have in that regard. But enough of that. So here is our Superman. Again, some flaws, some things that if I were to get, particularly in the face, if I were to get really particular, I would correct. But I hope you enjoyed this. Again, if there is anything you particularly liked today, and I apologize for that thing falling, anything you did not like, I am eager to hear your feedback because I would love to do more of these. So have a lovely evening.